joining me. My name is Scott. I do guitar restorations. And this here LG-0 is in for lacquer restoration. It kind of has leprosy. The lacquer has checked and it started to kind of pull away from the wood. There's also some binding that's cracked up here. We're gonna try to take care of all this stuff, but it looks really reptilian, and I know just the thing that will fix this problem. And you guys can maybe do this yourself if you have one like this, because it's not going to require any spray equipment. I'm going to do a brush on with some nitro lacquer and lacquer retarder in a well-ventilated garage. And another thing about the spray finishing is it's cold outside, and I don't do spray finishes in the winter time, but on a warm day coming up in the next week or so, we'll go out there and we'll brush this on and get it to flow down into all these little cracks and re-amalgamate the lacquer that's there. And it's not going to look brand new, but it's going to look a lot less like it has leprosy or some kind of disease. It also has a lot of chip out underneath inside of the guitar on the bridge plate. The ball ends of the strings are all kind of pulled up inside of the wood in there, so I'm going to fill that in with a neat little trick that TJ Thompson has shared with us on Instagram. And I've tried it before. It works real good, and it only takes 10-15 minutes to do. It doesn't require pulling the bridge plate out or making a piece of wood to patch over the top of the bridge plate. It's just filling in the missing wood to the existing wood. So binding, lacquer restoration, and a bridge plate restoration. That'll make a couple pearl dots for those screw holes that are missing. Should have pearl dots over those, or celluloid dots. And this guitar is going to be playing good because it doesn't need a neck reset. It's pretty resonant. And the action's pretty good. I'm going to leave that wooden bridge on there. That should be fine. Wooden saddle, I mean. Okay, my first couple glue ups are on this binding. And I don't want to put tape on this lacquer because it's so delicate and fragile. But I did want to use a bar clamp with 2 hockey pucks to give it a little traction. I can kind of clean up that glue squeeze out. But a bar clamp with hockey pucks just to hold that little piece in for a few hours. We'll move on to the next piece. Let's give it a little before listen if I can keep it in tune. These tuners aren't letting it stay in tune for very long. See? Anyways, it doesn't intonate real great. They're all a little sharp because the saddle's maybe a little too far forward, or the strings have cut little grooves into the rosewood saddle, and they're all leaning towards the front edge of it. So could do a little saddle work while we're at it, but for now I'm just going to test the sound of it, and hopefully when we're done it sounds a little fuller. Okay, before I go slathering this lacquer retarder and lacquer, it's a 50-50 mix, it's half and half. Before I go slathering it right down the whole front of the guitar, let's do an inconspicuous spot right here, which is the treble side of the headstock. You're always staring at the bass side, but rarely do you turn the thing around and look at the treble side. So what used to be little light colored lines, now they look like kind of almost dark lines. Come back in a little while and and look again, but you'll see as we go that it's a good look. Okay, now we're looking at the butt of the guitar. That is the butthole. No, just kidding. Anyways, let's try it on one of these spots. Inconspicuous area. No one looks at the butt of the guitar. Nobody but me. You like it? I know there's someone out there that's probably saying, you can't brush a finish on an old Gibson, it'll destroy the value of it. But it sure looks good. So I got a lot of brushing to do. I don't want to do it all in the house. I'm going to go out to the garage. We'll go up by the spray window, set up the table, and we'll just get a bigger brush and we'll just start slathering it on. Yeah, baby. Next thing I'm going to do is take a little naphtha on this dirty old bridge and kind of get an idea what the color is going to look like if I rub an oil finish on it. Is it going to be nice and dark enough? Do I want to add a little stain? Let's look at that. I think it looks pretty good, that color. That's a good color. This is a little bit of walnut oil. It's a very light drying oil that I've been using on my last couple coats of French polishing. When I French polish, I use that. It's recommended by Doug Proper, the guitar specialist. Otherwise known as Captain Sanderack. That's what I call him. Captain Sanderack. I think Captain Sanderack would be proud. To see some walnut oil in the wild being used. I don't think he's going to tune into my channel, but if he does, that'd be sweet. Well, we oiled her up. There's some blemishes right there. Maybe some glue. The tech that glued this bridge on may have slopped a little glue. I'm beginning my brush-on application in the well-ventilated garage. I'm starting with a small brush, but I'm going to progress onto a much bigger brush. Once again, my recipe is thinned lacquer for spraying. Okay, typically we take full-strength lacquer right out of the can, 60% lacquer, 40% thinner. And I take that thinned lacquer and mix it with 50-50. Thinned lacquer with half and half lacquer retarder. So it's a super thin mix. If you tried spraying that lacquer mix on here, it would never seep down into the cracks. It takes the bristles going over each crack to force the thin mixture to go down inside. And here's the bigger brush. Also, if you just took full strength lacquer and brushed it on, it wouldn't do the same thing either. And it would leave horrible, bumpy brush mark lines all over the face of the guitar, all over everything. This thin mixture levels itself and there are basically no brush lines visible. I can't see any, so there's no reason to go over the entire project with steel wool or Scotch-Brite or any kind of sanding is just brush on, let it cure, and maybe do a little touch-up. Some people were asking me about this process because they've come across these, and they like the way my method looks, my outcome. And I was letting them know that this process, sometimes you have to take the brush and scrub it. See right here where I'm kind of like brushing it in? You can tell as you brush it on whether it's going to get down inside the cracks or not. Sometimes you want a little wetter brush, and sometimes you want to move it back and forth quickly like you're brushing the teeth. Either way, it gets rid of this reptilian look. Not that reptiles are bad, I have nothing against them. But this guitar sure needed some help. It looked all dried out. And my customer, I sent him a couple photos, and he mentioned that his baby was in the spa for some moisturizing. I thought that was pretty funny. So I'm laying it on pretty wet. I'm wearing a respirator. I've got the fan in the window. I've got a second window cracked open for some fresh air intake. Celluloid to melt into some acetone. First, I'm just going to cut off some little shavings with this knife. Little pieces like that. I'm going to put them in this cup. You know, if you buy the celluloid domestically, they put a hazmat warning on it. I mean, and a big fee, like a hazmat fee of $50 per shipment. But if you buy it from China, there's no such thing, which is fucked up. I don't understand that. Our government is in love with China, the Chinese trade to them. They let them get away with everything. I can buy one screw from a Chinese company off of eBay and they will give me free shipping. If I want to ship that screw to my next door neighbor, it costs me like $10. Then I'll put some acetone in here and it'll start to melt. Let's see what happens. Better look at the procedure for shaving off the celluloid. Binding. It's celluloid binding. Tortoise. This is the light tortoise. I also have a darker shade. But the lighter shade is good for the pre-war instruments. All the vintage stuff had this more orange colored stuff. It's got a little yellow swirls going through it. I'm running through a little bit of yellow right here. And it's melting fine in this cup. I got this special stick that I sharpened on one end. I use that to stir the slurry. You must stir the slurry. Once it gets kind of, I don't know, the consistency of like a thin pancake batter, I'll drop it into some of these cracks. Here's one of my worst spots right here. And this is melting kind of nice. I kind of like the way this is melting. Hope it's going down in that crack. Seems to be. Seems to have filled the crack. I don't know. I've always done this with white binding, but I've never done it with this clear, translucent type. Hopefully, it does the same job. Just everywhere I see a little crack, I'm going to drop a little in. And I'll come back with sandpaper and files after it dries. I'll get it all flush again. I've got a bunch of spots. I'm going to go around the whole thing. A couple real bad spots right there. I used a good portion of it. There's a little bit left in the cup, and I wiped a little bit on the paper towel, and I started to realize I had a pretty good orange color going on there. So that was fun. And then in a few hours I can kind of start sanding it, going around, drop filling a little more lacquer here and there. Well, I just finished the bridge plate repair and I forgot to film it all, which is probably good. It's kind of complicated and I need to maybe one of these days make an entire video dedicated to doing that technique. But what it is I take a jack and I tape this real dense foam on here. The foam has to fit between these two screws. And I put saran wrap and tape to hold down the saran wrap. Then I smear on a little bit of the paste wax to keep the glue from sticking. Then I slather on a little shot of the accelerator. And then go inside and open up the jack. I probably called it a clamp, it's a jack. And you get it opened, and you can look through the sound hole, or the bridge holes as you're opening it up. With a light inside the guitar, you can see that until you get right up against the bottom of the bridge plate. At that point, you take the maple fibers that you've filed off the edge of a piece of hard maple with a rasp. And I drop it in with a little spoon. And then you drop in the StewMac number 10 thin super glue right down in each hole. Probably 4 or 5 drops. Pack it down. Put another layer of fibers. Pack it down. Another 4 or 5 drops in each hole. A little bit of accelerator. Then you can take the jack out and ream your holes just like it was a new bridge installation. You drill out the holes and ream them. And then we're ready to string the guitar. It's amazing. This project didn't take too long. So here I'm gonna use this radius piece of wood with 120 grit sandpaper to smooth over that binding. This also with 220. This is my shellacker. It's 3 parts shellac, 1 part lacquer. And it's a thin cut of shellac. It's a 1.5 pound cut. If you don't know about shellac, it probably sounds like I'm speaking Greek, but those of you that are familiar with shellac, that should all make sense. It brushes on nice, it dries quickly and hard, and it levels itself quite well. My pearl dots needed a little sizing, so I put them in the vise. Just filed them on the edge with a slight taper. I'm going to use a little bit of the Type Bond liquid hide glue. Glue for me and a glue for you. Everybody likes a little glue. So Someone told me a long time ago they took a tour of the tailor factory and the guy put a little saliva on his index finger and he grabbed the inlay and he put it right in, but my saliva's not sticky enough. I'll just put it there. And we'll just kind of hope it sticks. Well, I'd say it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. So I just showed some before and after pictures to people on Instagram and Facebook, and I got some feedback and questions and stuff, and I actually got a lot of positive comments, but one of them was whether the light colored checking lines will reappear, and I told him, well, the one from last year I hadn't heard anything, bad or anything, and then as soon as I come up here the next day, I noticed that it did kind of come back just in this one spot. I looked over the whole guitar. This one spot seems to have kind of reappeared slightly, not 100% reappeared, but a little bit. So I'm just gonna reapply a little bit. See what happens. Actually decided to come in here with some straight retarder. I think that helped a little bit. Alright, so the bridge plate repaired was really great, but I hope someday he comes back and has me plug this adjustable piece with a piece of rosewood and re-slot the saddle for a drop-in bone saddle. That'll make it sound super good. Let's hear it before. Stay in tune for very long. See? Once again.